The night my life changed forever started with a stupid joke I never thought anyone would take seriously. It was late, the office lights were dim, and the only sound left in the building was the faint hum of computers and the distant traffic outside the glass windows. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted after another 12-hour shift, staring at the glowing skyline of Chicago. My coworkers had already gone home hours earlier, leaving me alone with spreadsheets, deadlines, and the quiet pressure that had slowly been crushing my life for months. I was just another employee trying to survive. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my CEO, and what happened next still feels unreal even years later. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this. My name is Nathan Carter, and 3 years ago I was barely holding my life together. I worked as a financial analyst at a large tech company in Chicago. The job looked impressive on paper, but the reality was far from glamorous. Long hours, constant pressure, and a salary that somehow disappeared before the end of every month. My mother was sick back in Ohio, drowning in medical bills, and I was sending most of my paycheck to help her. My tiny apartment felt emptier every night, and most days I wondered if I was just running on a treadmill that would never stop. Our CEO, Victoria Harrington, was someone most employees rarely even saw. She was known throughout the company as brilliant, fearless, and completely untouchable. She had built the company from a small startup into a billion-dollar empire. Her schedule was packed with investors, media appearances, and board meetings. People talked about her like she was some kind of legend rather than a person. I had seen her only a handful of times in passing. She was elegant, confident, and carried herself with a calm authority that made entire rooms fall silent when she walked in. That night, I was finishing a financial report that was due the next morning. My coworker Marcus had been joking earlier that day about how stressed everyone looked, and he said something ridiculous like, "Man, if someone married the CEO, they'd never have to worry about money again." Without thinking, I laughed and said something even more ridiculous. Maybe I should just marry Victoria Harrington and solve all my problems. It was just office humor, a stupid comment thrown into the air like a paper airplane. What I didn't realize was that Marcus had posted that exact joke on the company's internal chat board, and somehow, the CEO had seen it. Hours later, when my phone buzzed, I assumed it was just another email reminder. Instead, it was a private message from Victoria Harrington. My heart nearly stopped when I read the words. It was short, direct, and completely unexpected. She wrote that she saw the message on the chat board. She said my comment made her laugh after a very difficult day. Then she wrote something that made my brain freeze. "If you're serious about that joke, come over tonight, let's talk." At first I thought it was a prank. Maybe someone had hacked the account. Maybe Marcus was messing with me. But when I checked the sender carefully, it was real. The CEO of a billion-dollar company had just invited me to her house. For several minutes I just stared at the phone, trying to decide if this was the worst idea in the history of bad decisions. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and sometimes life changes when you take a step you never planned to take. An hour later, I found myself standing outside one of the most beautiful homes I had ever seen. Victoria Harrington's house overlooked Lake Michigan. It was modern, elegant, and glowing warmly in the quiet night. The kind of place that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. I almost turned around 3 times before finally ringing the bell. When the door opened, she stood there in a simple sweater and jeans, looking nothing like the intimidating CEO everyone feared at the office. She looked human, tired but warm. She smiled in a way that immediately made the situation less surreal. That night wasn't about business. It wasn't about power or status. It was about 2 people talking honestly in a way neither of us expected. Victoria told me she had spent years building her company, sacrificing relationships, sleep, and most of her personal life along the way. People admired her success, but very few truly knew her. The higher she climbed, the lonelier the world became. When she saw my joke on the company board, it made her laugh not because it was clever, but because it reminded her that somewhere in the company there were still people who hadn't become robotic corporate machines. So she did something spontaneous, something completely unlike her. She invited the man who made the joke. At first I was nervous, barely able to speak without feeling like I might lose my job by accident. But over time the conversation shifted. We talked about life, about pressure, about family, about the strange loneliness that can exist both at the top of a company and at the bottom of the ladder. For the first time in months, I spoke honestly about my struggles, about my mother's illness, about the nights I stayed awake wondering how to keep everything from falling apart. Victoria didn't interrupt. She listened. And when someone powerful truly listens to you, it feels different. By the end of that night, something had changed, not because of money, not because of status, but because someone who had everything decided to care about someone who had almost nothing. The next week, Victoria asked me to join a small strategic team inside the company. She said she needed people who still understood what real life looked like outside boardrooms. It wasn't charity, it was opportunity, and it forced me to grow faster than I ever imagined. Months passed. Late nights turned into big projects, and big projects turned into trust. The strange friendship that started with a joke slowly became something deeper, something built on respect, honesty, and a shared understanding of what loneliness can do to a person. Life didn't magically become perfect. My mother's health was still fragile, the work was still demanding, the future was still uncertain. But I wasn't alone anymore, and sometimes that's the difference between giving up and pushing forward. 2 years after that night, standing on the same balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, Victoria asked me a question that felt like destiny closing a circle, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, just as a woman, and this time it wasn't a joke. Before I tell you how that moment ended, I want to ask you something special. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a second to comment the word HOPE below. It helps this channel reach more people who need stories like this. That night I looked out over the water and realized something powerful. Life doesn't always change through massive events. Sometimes it changes because of a single message, a single moment, a single person choosing kindness instead of indifference. I once joked about marrying my CEO because I thought my life was falling apart. But what actually changed my life wasn't money, power, or success. It was the simple fact that someone powerful decided to see the humanity in someone ordinary. And sometimes, that's where the most beautiful stories begin. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories that remind us how powerful kindness can be.